Now the sun moves about 10 degrees in 40 minutes. So if you're watching the sun move across the sky, okay, in 40 minutes it traverses 10 degrees. So that day was 40 minutes longer than a normal day, because the sun went back. It wasn't just a shadow, it was the sun that went back. Okay, guess what? In my computer, on my hard drive there, I have two maps. One showing where the sun was, where the day and night were before the miracle happened, and the other one right after the miracle happened. And there are places, for example, eastern United States, the Indians tell of a sunrise and then the sun went back down. West central China, there's a story recorded in the Bhagavad Gita that says that the sun went down and came back up. The Grecians talk about the sun going back in the sky, moving back. The Greeks. Also South America. They all have the same story. Again, it was a real event. It's history. It is not mythology. Mythology is instead what to deny it is mythology. In Malachi 4:2. Malachi 4:2. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son, capital S-U-N, of righteousness arise with healing in his wings. The sun arising. Well, what is this talking about? Yeah, it's about the resurrection, isn't it? Sure. This is a reference to the resurrection. Well, if the sun rising isn't literal, and the resurrection is, how come that capital S in this verse makes the difference? You may find it hard to believe, but I know because I used to be one. An atheist actually has a harder time believing in the resurrection than in a geocentric universe. Which is the greater miracle? I mean, there's a verse that talks about the sun having risen upon the earth. As a matter of fact, it was when Lot entered Zoar. All right, that word risen is figurative if the heliocentrist is right. And then at the tomb, it speaks about the first day of the week after Jesus had risen. Now, how come the risen, when it refers to the sun, is fictional or figurative? Well, if that's figurative, then you can just as well say that the risen, when it refers to the resurrection, is figurative. They're both equally great miracles. All right. So we left out. We got here. What does the Bible say about it? Okay. By 1650, people had discounted all that. They believed in science first. Science falsely, so-called. And why did they do that? Well, there's two books. There's the book of nature, and there's the book that we call Scripture. And there were two books at the time, and they were considered equal in authority. All right, you notice now we have a situation where we have a book, the book of nature, that is on a par with Scripture. And the two are not allowed to contradict. Now, the humanist solution was to have the book of nature overrule Scripture. The Christian is supposed to have Scripture overrule nature. But that's how this stuff was sold. So do you think that they stopped at just discrediting the Bible in the realm of the natural realm, the humanists? No. By the mid-18th century, we had the formalization of higher criticism. It's called higher because it sounds more authoritative. That's why it's called higher. And there is a lower criticism, which many pastors give some authority to. I haven't ever seen lower criticism produce anything I could agree with. As a matter of fact, a lot of what was lower criticism now was higher criticism at one time. Anyhow, higher criticism came to fruition with a French humanist named Jean Astruc. And he built it on Spinoza. But in any case, the humanist critics were then joined by the Jesuits and formed an alliance to destroy the Protestants. In particular, the Protestant Bibles also, and in particular the King James, the authorized version. Having cast doubt on the inerrancy of Scripture and the sciences by discrediting the doctrine of the stability of the earth, the attack now moved to combat the credibility of Scripture in all areas touched upon. The Copernican revolution had changed the concept of revolution, quote, revolution, unquote, forever. It had created a cause to rally the humanists and other haters of God against the Bible and the Bible's God. The Copernican revolution had done so by removing the earth from a special location that rests in the midst of heaven and reducing it to the status of a planet, a wandering star, as in Jude 13. Wandering planets, wandering stars. That the Greek there is wandering planet. The earth is not a planet. If it doesn't move, it's not a planet. If it doesn't go around the sun, it's not a planet. Now what does happen is that the earth is at the center of the universe. The planets go around the sun. They go around the sun just like you were taught in school. The only difference is that the sun now goes around the earth once a year, carrying it drags all the planets with it. Now I've shown I have a concept of the firmament that I'm not going to go into today, but the firmament is the most massive thing that God ever created. It is if you take the size of a sugar cube to get to the density of the firmament, you'd have to put 10 trillion universes into that cube, squeeze that many universes in that cube. It's along with 37 zeros after, in order to match that density. If the firmament is the same size as the universe, the firmament is a 1 with 123 zeros after it, times as massive as the universe. Guess who's going to win a tug of war? Yeah, the universe loses every time. And if the earth is at the center of that firmament, at the exact center. Any attempt to move the earth is equivalent to trying to move that firmament. And what happens when you try to really smash your fist to break an iron rod? Yeah, you break your fist. Or if you're lucky, you bounce off it. And that's what happens to the universe. When something happens to try to move the earth, be it a snowfall or whatever, whenever that happens, it's like trying to move the firmament, and the universe has to adjust. Now it doesn't adjust as a whole. It adjusts at a rate, locally at the earth first, and then it travels out, away from the earth. It changes. But I won't go into that. That's real heavy stuff. So as the earth is not a planet, and trying to move it is like trying to move the universe. Actually worse. If people actually believed that the earth was an insignificant planet around an insignificant star, which most people do, as we're taught, and we're taught that, as we grew up, we were taught that, then mankind too could easily be stripped of his God-given liberty. That word liberty, have you ever thought about it? You see that word lib in there, L-I-B? What other words do you see that in? Try library. That particular liberty has in it the idea of a book, of going by a book. Guess which book it was intended to go by? The Scripture. And how do you get liberty from Scripture? You read it, and you study it, and believe it. The truth will set you free. All right, now we're coming on, we're into the 18th century now, okay? The Jesuits, who mostly dominated the universities of continental Europe at that time, took control of the field of higher criticism. They were the top scholars, okay? They were the university presidents and so on, so they got to say who was allowed to teach and who wasn't. That's how they took control. To further discredit the Bible in general and the English authorized Bible in particular. With the French Revolution, which was a direct result of the Copernican Revolution, that is a revolt against God and the promotion of humanism. That was the essence of the French Revolution. The authority of scriptures in Europe was pretty much gone. Europe no longer believes in an inerrant preserved Bible. It just isn't there. It hasn't been for over 150 years. As a matter of fact, I was told by European scholars that they settled the matter of the motion of the earth 150 years ago, when they compromised Scripture. Only Britain and America still held onto the Bible as an authority. The French Revolution had been encouraged by the American Revolution. The American Revolution was earlier. The difference was that the French Revolution was based on humanist principles. The American Revolution was based on biblical principles. Now, they weren't perfect, but they were far better than the French Revolution. Now, all you need to do is check a history book and find out. An old history book, not the rewritten ones they have now. Britain's downfall started in the early 1800s with Charles Lyell. Now, Lyell was a lawyer, and he was a member of the London Geological Society. Now, you might say, why would a lawyer be involved in the London Geological Society? Well, it was money. because the Geological Society would get advance word of discoveries of coal and ore and all that kind of stuff, and so you could then invest and buy out or whatever, you know, make money. So they were just basically monitoring the geological reports coming in. And Lyell wanted more political power. And the only way he could get it as a humanist was to discredit the Bible. And the only way that he saw to discredit the Bible in England was to discredit Paley's Divine Right of Kings. And now the London Geological Society had been trying to do that now for 20 or 30 years prior to that, without success. But Lyell got a brainstorm. He decided that what he would do, he'd write a book in which he would say that every geological event that was at that time considered to be the result of Noah's flood could be explained by events that were just normal and going on today. It's called the uniformitarian principle. It was a lie, and he knew it. But to his amazement, the idea caught on like wildfire. And it stimulated theories about evolution. So in other words, evolution, modern evolution, was stimulated by the uniformitarian principle, that is, you know, that the present is the key to the past, that all events came slowly and gradually. No big catastrophes or so. So evolution is based on a lie.
Absolutely.
The Englishman Charles Darwin then extended evolution to zoology. Darwin confessed that without the Copernican revolution, if it hadn't been for the Copernican revolution, his theory wouldn't have a chance. It would be dismissed as sheer nonsense, a fairy tale. The German Karl Marx applied the theory of evolution to politics and economics. He too confessed that his communistic ideas would not have seen the light of day if it was not for the Copernican revolution. The smallest of all the doctrines in Scripture. And you discover that the entire framework of Scripture is based on that small, insignificant doctrine. The Austrian Friedrich Nietzsche laid the groundwork for Superman. He said, okay, if we're evolving into Superman. Hitler said, this is not a quote, mind you, Hitler said, Superman is no good. You have to have a super race. And he started a genetics program. This gave rise to the likes of Margaret Sanger. Okay. And the founder of the organization that Ernest so correctly calls plant predators. While all that was going, we'll come back to that. While all that was going on in the 18th century, the first evidence appeared which could be interpreted as pro-heliocentric. And that was discovered by James Bradley, an English astronomer, of aberration. Now, you've all walked in the rain with an umbrella, right? And you know that the faster you walk, in order to stay dry, you have to tip the umbrella forward. All right. So now, if the Earth is going through space, we also have to point our telescopes forward as we're moving around the sun. Right? And you try it, and yes, you have to tip it forward from the mean position. And if you stop there, then you say, it's proven, it's proven. The heliocentric model is proven. What's another way you go that you have to tip your umbrella? What's another reason why you have to tip it to straight, if you're standing still, for example?
Wind.
If there's a wind. Right. Okay. If the stars were moving past the Earth, you'd also have to tip the telescope out further ahead. So it's not a proof at all. And most astronomers will freely admit it's not really a proof. But that was the only piece of evidence up to that point. Now there was a preemptive strike by the geocentrics, by God on the geocentric front in about 1800. The triumph of aberration was short-lived. In the early 1800s, the first of 3 experiments designed to directly measure the speed of the Earth through space was done. Okay, so there were 3 experiments in the 1800s done to actually measure the speed of the Earth through space. Guess what speed all 3 of them gave?
0.
0. Now the first one, they're all basically variations on the following idea. Suppose this was a piece of glass. Okay? If I were to shine a beam of light, like a laser beam, down through it, it would go right through it and put a spot on, and show a spot on the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now suppose that I moved the glass real fast. What happens is the light hits the glass, gets carried with the glass until it emerges on the other side, and it goes straight down again. So now you actually see the spot has moved. Now imagine this now, okay? That's in the lab. Suppose that instead of the lab, we would use starlight. After all, if the Earth is zipping through space at 18.6 miles a second, when it hits the glass is moving with the Earth, the starlight hits the glass, it should be dragged with the glass over, and the spot should move from the laboratory position straight down. So if it was straight down, this starlight would be here. If not, the starlight would be there. And when they do the experiment, the starlight goes straight down. The glass plate is not dragging the light any one iota, nothing. It's as if you're shining the laser down right in the laboratory. Speed 0. The second case was, it resulted in an experiment that's commonly called Airy's failure. Airy filled the telescope tube with water and discovered that he had pointed ahead the same amount as it would if it were empty. Because the idea was the speed of light is slower through water, it would take longer to travel through the tube, and so had more chance to be dragged a further distance because it spent more time in the tube than the water. Right? Because you can do the same experiment with water by this, okay? You can shine the light down on the moving stream of water, and it will also drag the light. The third experiment was a real complicated experiment that was done here in Cleveland by 2 men named Michelson and Morley. Morley was a teacher at Western Reserve University. That's not, the campus wasn't far from here. And they decided to do a variation of the Rowboats Experiment. In the rowboat experiment, you send a rowboat upstream and then downstream, and you send the same speed across the stream and back again. you find out that the time is different. One is longer than the other. One takes longer than the other, although they're going the same distance. So if they do that to light, the light should arrive at different times. And when they did the experiment, they observed that basically the time was zero, that there was no motion. So all three experiments gave the same result. Pretty much zero. So even science has to admit that now. And I'll tell you what, one of the things that, there's one Christian physicist, I'm not sure how Christian, but a Christian physicist, who says that it's as if physics conspires to make the speed of light equal all around the Earth. So the experiments always show a speed of zero. So there's a conspiracy theory for you if you want to explain this as a conspiracy. Physics conspires to make the experiments show a zero result. And he says, I haven't really looked through his proof, but he says that if we were to do it elsewhere, it will not show zero. If we were to do it on Mars, for example.
Are you saying that the speed of light,
No,
that's not true?
no. I'm
Is
not
it
saying the speed
significant?
of light is zero. And he's not saying that the speed of light is zero at the Earth. It's just that the experiment will give a zero speed.
Okay.
It's as if the Earth is standing still in space. Now, if you're trying to measure the rotation, you get a result.
Now, he would be right. If you were on Mars and did this experiment, wouldn't it would show
Rotation.
speed, wouldn't it? Because it's going around the sun.
Yeah, it's going around the sun, and he says that it should show the Michelson-Morley and the plate glass, and that should show
So he doesn't know what he has.
a non-zero speed. Yeah. I know what he's basing it on. He's basing it on a bunch of quasars and pulsars. He may be right. I'd love it if he were right, because that would really settle the question once and for all. Okay, now for 86 years, mind you, physicists tried various explanations that would allow the heliocentric model to be true, while all the experiments say it's false. They finally settled on the theory, there are a whole bunch of them, they finally settled on one, Einstein's theory of relativity. Einstein invented a geometry that was such that the experiment will show a zero velocity for no matter where you conducted it, no matter how fast you were going or whatever. In other words, he made every point in the universe, even the craziest hard-spinning nuclear particle. If you were, he made it look like it was at rest and not spinning at the center of the universe. That's what relativity's done. So it's relativity that keeps people from actually acknowledging the geocentric Earth at this point. And because it's based on an Earth centered at rest, you can't disprove it because the Earth is centered on the universe at rest. He made it so it could not be disproved. So it's not really a scientific theory, because a scientific theory can be disproved. You can always adopt it to meet any observation. Okay, Einstein crouched this stuff in intricate mathematical symbolism that could be expressed a lot more clearly and simpler, but he wanted to make it so sophisticated that few men would see it as anything, would not see the sophistry underneath it. You know what sophistry is, right? Sophistry is the philosophy that the one who does the best snow job on a population has the truth, or is the winner.
Political talk.
Yeah. The ascendancy of humanism